Bird flu was recently detected in milk from a dairy herd in Maricopa County. It's the first such detection in the state. That information from the Arizona Department of Agriculture. And joining us now is Michael Worobey. He leads the University of Arizona's Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology. And it's good to have you here because I got a lot of questions regarding bird flu. Michael, thank you so much for being. Give us just a 30,000-foot view here, a bird's eye view, if you will, of bird flu in Arizona.
Sure. Okay. So over the last couple of years, a variant of influenza virus that has been in past decades associated with quite high mortality rates has been spreading through the bird population. And about a year ago, we realized it had crossed into dairy cattle, a species that hadn't been infected before. So we knew that this was something that was spreading in dairy cattle around the country, but Arizona just announced that they have discovered a second jump from birds into at least one herd of dairy cattle in Maricopa County.
How does that affect the milk that comes from this herd?
Well, it's interesting. The virus, when it gets into dairy cattle, unlike when it gets into us and infects our airways, uh, it can replicate at very high levels in the milk glands of the animals. And so milk can have a very, very high amount of virus in it. But the good news is that if milk is pasteurized, it just completely eliminates the risk of infection from that milk.
Interesting. Okay. Poultry flocks, I'm hearing they're affected as well here.
Absolutely. So if you just imagine wild birds flying across airways or flyways, as we call them, state to state and locally, these animals interact with our animals. So they will sometimes land on dairy farms. They'll sometimes land near poultry operations. Even someone's backyard flock can become infected just by the mixing between the wild birds and these domesticated species. And so there's no way to really prevent this from happening with 100% precision. What we have to do is try to find it early when it does happen.
And you've been able to find it, and I don't know if this is genome sequencing or what you're doing here, but there were some outbreaks in Nevada. Now you got something here in Arizona you can probably take a look at too. But what are you finding?
Yeah, absolutely. So my team actually has developed the most reliable methods for going from the genetic sequences of these viruses, which is about 10,000 or between 10 and 15,000 of these A's, C's, G's, and T's that make up genetic material, and sort of putting them together and looking at the differences between something that was infected on a dairy farm in Nevada or Arizona, birds that have been sampled and the virus sequenced from it, and create this evolutionary tree, the family tree of these viruses, and then tell things like when and where and how did the virus actually jump from birds into, in this case, cattle. And so up in Nevada, just in the last couple weeks, that was the big news that the only second time that this virus had been seen to move from birds to dairy cattle was identified up in Nevada. Cattle were quarantined by January 24th, but our results are showing that that jump may have taken place a month or more before that. And so can reveal that these things can be under the radar for some time before they're caught by surveillance.
And just again, some basic questions here. Are you talking a particular strain of bird flu, or is this thing mutating already?
It's mutating all of the time just because when viruses replicate their genetic material, it's kind of like typing out really quickly on your keyboard with no spell checker. They don't correct their mistakes like we do. Um, uh, and it is a new strain of this so-called H5N1, which is related to H1N1 and H3N2, the influenza A viruses that we get infected with. Um, and within that, there are even genotypes, specific genotypes, where you can tell, okay, this Arizona one is different than the one from a year ago and different from the one in Nevada.
Are we seeing the jump into different animals? Are we seeing the jump into dogs and cats, into humans?
We're actually seeing, it's an interesting question you raise. In addition to cattle, which have not before been an animal that we've had sustained transmission of this virus, we're also seeing it a lot in cats, both cats that are on dairy farms and are drinking milk that is contaminated with the virus. But also now we're finding that there are cross-species jumps that are occurring quite frequently, not involving dairy and milk, but involving cats who are probably eating birds that they catch that are infected, and it's going directly from birds to cats, probably many, many times across the country right now.
Are those the kinds of things that pet lovers need to be aware of? I mean, is that a threat to humans?
Well, anytime you have this interface between humans and these viral variants that haven't been established in humans, that is a potential route, quite literally, possibly to the next pandemic. That's how new pandemics happen, when an animal virus gets into a human and either comes with or acquires the ability to not only infect that one human, but to transmit human to human after that. And so this new variant of H5N1 has opened up a new front in cattle that we never had to worry about before. And it's also crossing into cats. But we should also mention that related viruses have circulated in pigs. The related viruses circulate in dogs, horses, and we haven't seen those other than in 2009 when the stars aligned and one did manage to jump from pigs into humans. We don't see it happening inevitably. And so it's kind of hope for the best, but plan for the worst. And we want to keep an eye on this one because it is opening up new opportunities to make that jump. And every time it jumps into a person, our immune system then selects for changes that can make it a better human virus.
Interesting, interesting stuff. Michael Worobey, University of Arizona. Good to have you here. Great stuff. Thank you for joining us.